The world is saved. The living room's dark save for light being cast from the big TV screen and the imminent sunrise that's teasing the one starry sky with whispers of morning.
Hey, George.
Hey, Lines. How's it going?
It's going, I don't want to say explosively well. No one says that. I couldn't,
No.
I was trying to find like a good pun. No one
No.
in the history of the world has ever said explosively well.
No, they haven't. I mean, that joke was not the bomb.
Ah! You know what that was? That was like, I thought there was only 5 seconds on the buzzer, so I like hurled the ball from like half court, and you were like right under the basket, like, dude, why? And you just like grabbed my air ball and like went for an easy layup.
The skadoosh. But yes, no, we played Bomberman. And
Wait. So before we do anything else, can I do something I've been thinking about doing?
Sure.
Okay. So, at the beginning, we always do like our, what's your childhood memories of this game? So when we started playing this game, I was like, this is definitely not one of the ones I played as a kid. And I kind of knew that going in because we played Bomberman GB, which is one of the Game Boy ones.
Right.
Well, I did a teeny little bit of research, not a lot.
How dare you, sir?
I'm very sorry, but I promise it pays off. Here are the Bomberman games in just the main series, because there's also been spin-offs and there were mobile games and there was all the portable ones are considered separate from the main series. Here is just the main series. Bomberman, 3D Bomberman, Bomberman 2, Bomberman 93, Super Bomberman 94, Super Bomberman 2, Super Bomberman 3, Super Bomberman 4, Saturn Bomberman, Super Bomberman 5, Atomic Bomberman 64, Saturn Bomberman Fight with 2 exclamation points, Bomberman World, Bomberman Hero, Bomberman Party Edition, Bomberman 64 The Second Attack, Bomberman Online, Bomberman 64, Bomberman Generation, Bomberman Jetters, Online Bomberman Act Zero, Bomberman Live, Bomberman Blast, Bomberman Ultra, Bomberman Live Battlefest, and Super Bomberman R, which came out 2017.
Wow. That's
less than half of the total in the series.
That's intense, dude. That is a lot of Bomberman. It makes me feel a little bit better about when I was like, oh man, we should totally play Bomberman. And then, we looked at our respective libraries and and I was like, I don't know if this is the one I played, but because I thought I was like, I was playing 3-card Monty. I did not know that I was playing 27-card Monty.
Yeah, and here's the reason I looked this up in the first place is because there was something, and we'll get to this when we talk about the game, but there was something about the game that I was like, this is odd. And I don't quite know why what's happening is happening. And it turns out that the Bomberman franchise is way, way more popular in Japan and what's called the PAL region. So, Europe, basically. And I think also Australia. But Bomber Boy was the first one on Game Boy, which totally is named the way you would expect. But that wasn't called Bomberman in the United States. They rebranded it for funsies. Bomberman GB, which you would think is what we played, was actually called Wario Blast featuring Bomberman when they brought it to the United States. The one we played, which is called Bomberman GB, which was actually Bomberman GB2 in Japan. They went all full Final Fantasy on it, and they were like, well, we're going to just totally screw with the numbering system for funsies and funsies. And that is how we both ended up sitting in front of a classic game in our library that we were like, how did I end up with this game that is not any of the games I remember?
Well, it's just, it's confusing. First of all, I hate that they do that. When they're like, oh, well, okay, what is it named? It's named Thing A in Japan. Okay, we're going to name it Thing 2. And it's like, it's not even the same, like, it ain't even the same ballpark. It ain't even the same league. It ain't even the same other sport. It's like, I don't know why they do that, but that all of that adds up. And actually, it was weird when you said Super Bomberman Wario Blast or whatever. I think I might have played that one.
Well, so that was one of the more popular ones in the US because it had familiar Mario characters, and the Game Boy was where Wario first got popularized as a character. So, like, a lot of people were like, oh, Wario. And because, I mean, that was, mid 90s, whereas Bomberman goes way the hell back to 83. So there's like, it's crazy, man. I had no idea he had this ridiculous lineage. Like, just,
Oh,
I mean,
yes. No,
they're still making Bomberman games. Like, he is current.
I'm surprised he hasn't. Has he shown up in Smash Brothers yet?
Ooh, I don't think so. I'm a little behind on Smash Brothers, but that'd be cool.
Yeah, right. I'd play that. I mean, have Bomberman versus the Blue Bomber,
Right? I mean, they shoved Pac-Man in there. Geez.
God. Anyways, but so yes, we played Bomberman, and we kind of tangentially touched on our nostalgia goggles experience, which is we both played one or more of these games, but not this game when we were younger.
Yeah, and it's important that, to be fair, even though neither of us have nostalgia goggles for this specific game, if you're going to screw that up, it's good to do it with a game like Bomberman, because Bomberman is a puzzle game. And its puzzliness has gotten other quirks over time, but it's not like, oh, I played Legend of Zelda The Wind Waker. That's just like all of them. No, it's not, right? Or I played Final Fantasy. They all have magic and stuff, right? No. But, I mean, if you've played one version of Tetris, you've essentially played all of them for the purposes of being able to carry on a conversation about Tetris. So when I got like an hour into this and I was like, I'm pretty positive this is not the one I played, I didn't feel that bad about it.
No, I didn't either. When I was like jamming around, to me, I was a little worried at first until I ran into the power-up system, because it took a little while before I got a power-up, and I was like, if this doesn't have power-ups in it, then it is substantially different than the game I played. But right when I got the power-ups, I'm like, no, this is basically the same. And actually, this one had some interesting twists of gameplay that I thought the one I played did not have, that I thought were very unique and interesting. So I'm actually glad that we played this one, because I think this was a better game than the one I played overall. But
yeah, take that, the other 47 versions of Bomberman.
Take that, the other 47 versions, one of which I played and am insulting, but I can't insult that specific one, so I'm insulting the entire group.
That sounds like how, like, culturalism or racism or like religious bigotry, like all those things start like that. Like, This one time a person from my out group, splashed water on me, and now I hate everyone in that out group because I can't remember who it was.
Yes. And it was just kind of like, and now I hate everybody in that group. Well, what was the group? Well, they had, and then just one person picked like skin color as opposed to eye color or hair color or nose type or any other distinguishing features. And
they had arms.
Yeah. Thus a race was born, and thus racism was born. And that's,
thanks, Bomberman.
Yeah, thanks, Bomberman. Didn't know Bomberman was what started racism. But anyways, the more you know. I learned stuff in this podcast, and that's what I think is important.
That's what we're here for.
The top of the hour visuals?
Yeah. So I didn't don't do it. I didn't play a lot of Game Boy as a kid. I didn't have a Game Boy. I foolishly went Game Gear because I followed that stupid blue hedgehog the way I imagine hardcore drug addicts chase the white dragon. So my best friend at the time had a Game Boy, and I never borrowed his Game Boy, but it was one of those things where I would like play it at his house, So I'd be over, he'd be playing, Earthbound or something, and I'd like pick up his Game Boy and play Tetris or Super Mario Land or whatever. So like most of my Game Boy experience came kind of through that venue. I'm having not played Game Boy a lot, and then playing this on a television, like Super Game Boy style, like way bigger than you would normally see it on a Game Boy screen. I was actually still pretty impressed with how much information they communicated with such low fidelity. I mean, they have like 3 colors and like 4 pixels, and like one of the pixels like doesn't always light up, and yet you always know exactly what you're supposed to be looking at. Like, it's kind of remarkable.
I was very impressed with the visuals, and again, like it ain't The Witcher 3. It's not that. It's never going to be that. But considering how little they had to work with, I was also remarkably impressed with the visuals, because at first, before I played it, I pretty much had the comment cocked and ready to go in my mind of, because normally we talk about visuals as far as visuals go, right? For like the aesthetics and like how pleasing it is, and then visuals and surface of gameplay. And I was like, well, it's a Game Boy game. You can't really talk about the aesthetics of the visuals because it's so low resolution, But when I played it, I was like, no, you absolutely can actually in this game, which like honest to God shocked me,
Well, I think the cartoony style of Mario, Mega Man, Bomberman, even the Game Boy Legend of Zelda is like that kind of, we are not going for realism, we are going for clarity. Like if you measured like Link's sword in the Game Boy Legend of Zelda's, it would be like 40% as large as him. It would be like freaking
Cloud Sword.
Exactly, right? It'd be a Buster Sword. It would be stupid, but you don't think that because it's a cartoony representative style. And I felt exactly the same way in playing Bomberman GB in the North American region because it's everything is strictly representative. Nothing is trying to even make an attempt at high fidelity. Everything is just like, here's a block, here's a bomb, here's Bomberman, here's a monster. But they're almost like tokens, like on a game board. Like you don't expect them to be correct ratios and to have, perfect visual fidelity. You're just like, oh yeah, this token represents wheat. I have sheep who has wheat for sheep, right? Wheat for sheep. But it's just, it fits this so well. And I feel like Nintendo probably knew that. They were probably like, we don't have a lot to work with here. We need to go with an art style that is going to fit this medium.
Well, and even like with the fun, interesting little tricks, like the reason why Mario has a mustache kind of a thing is, I think that's kind of why they went with Bomberman's entire face being eyes.
Just eyes, yeah.
Yeah, because it's just kind of like, well, we want, you to know, like on screen, it's like, oh, well, that's Bomberman. And it's like, well, there's no way that we can render like a sprite this size, because the sprite needs to be a certain size, that way you can get a certain amount of the screen. So like that's it, and I may be wrong, but like it's my understanding that that's in general what regulates the size of the sprite is how much of the screen you need to be able to see on this small screen.
Basically, because if he was twice the size, you would have twice as many pixels, and you would never know what the hell was going on.
Toy Story, but yes, so that would be problematic, right?
Yeah. Yep. Yes.
So they were like, all right, well, he needs to be this big. It's like, well, if he's that big, we can make him like a stick figure. And it's like, no. We want him to actually we want him to be a fun character. It's like, well, I don't know.
At this point, he'd already been on the Nintendo and in the arcade. So they were like, well, we kept him super simple. Now you have less colors, by which we mean none colors.
Yeah.
And like half as many pixels to work with, but he needs to still be recognizable as the same character.
Right. And I thought, did a great job. The one thing that threw me off, and I don't know why they made this choice, but it was fine, was the hat.
Okay. Yes. Okay. So yeah, this is what I was bearing the lead on during the opening is, having not known when I first sat down to play this, that there were, at last count, 87,000 different entries in the series. Mm-hmm. I didn't realize that a lot of them are like themed and silly and have like a totally unnecessary story lumped on top of the puzzle, which is so obvious in hindsight. Yes, you have a puzzle game, you keep rebranding the puzzle game like every puzzle game in history has done, right? That's why there's 4,000 versions of Monopoly. That was probably underselling it. That's why there's 400,000 versions of Monopoly.
I was gonna say, I think I may personally own 4,000 versions of Monopoly that people bought me as jokes.
Yeah, exactly, right? So it's really obvious in hindsight that because this has been a long-running series and because they have a bajillion entries, that they would essentially just keep reskinning them, and then sometimes adding some mechanics that are appropriate to the theming, which we'll talk about. But at first, I was really, really put off by the Indiana Jones theming, because I was just like, Bomberman, you're cool. Like you don't have to dress up as Indiana Jones to be cool. Like you're cool all by yourself, Bomberman. Yeah. But then in between the areas, there's like little not cutscenes, but like little like tableaus of him in like a single panel comic strip kind of thing. And then like going on, you get the whip, right? Which is like a cool little Indiana Jones visual. And more and more I found myself being like, yeah, like I'm totally on board with Bomb-Diana Jones. Like you do you, Bomb-Diana Jones. Like, and I don't know exactly where that crossover happened, but I remember at the beginning being staunchly against it, and by the end being like, yeah, whip it good.
They called the dog Bomb-Diana. So yeah, no, I mean that was the thing. The hat really threw me at first, and especially because I did not know how much that little head dealy was like important to me until all of a sudden there was a hat, and I was like, take off the hat. You're indoors. What are you, an animal?
Yeah,
and,
I mean, it's like Alex Trebek walking out without his mustache. That first night, everybody was just like, "Who's this asshole?"
this guy. But yeah, no. So eventually, I did get used to it, especially because, and one of the things, and this kind of feeds individuals. So it is a puzzle game, right? And most importantly, is it's a timed puzzle game, right? So when you pause it, it gives you a pause screen, right? And it does that so that way you can't pause it and figure out what you're going to do, you know?
Right. You can't stop time and study the universe.
Exactly, which would be neat, but also ultimately antithetical to what they're trying to do. But it's on that pause screen that there's a number of visuals. First of all, again, the it's just, like Bomberman, kind of sleeping, catching some Z's.
Taking a little nap on a hillside, sunny day. Presumably the sky is pure white.
Yeah, it's pure sickly vomit green. It's fun. And so he's got the hat off, and so I saw he still had his little head dealing. I was like, oh, good. Somehow I felt comforted. But then I saw something else where I was like, and I did not know that there were 6.022 times 10 to the 23rd Bomberman games. But I did not.
Was that a mole?
That is a mole.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I'm trying to think of like what Faraday's constant is. So just, like, he's throwing these like insanely weird numbers out. No, this is true. Bomber Girl. Okay.
She in my reading over the list, there was exactly one game called Bomber Girl, and I'm sure she was in a bunch of the others because a bunch of the other games involve multiplayer. And it's not fair to assume. There's no reason I should assume they included a female character, but she does exist, and she did at least get one game of her own. And I think it is likely that because several of the games focus on multiplayer, that she probably made other appearances, but I cannot confirm or deny.
So she's like the Bomberman Princess Peach.
I got the impression she's more like the Bomberman Miss Pac-Man. Like, she is exactly like Bomberman, but pink.
Shrink it and pink it, right? But yeah, no, I thought
charged twice as much.
Yeah, but when I saw that, I was like, Bomber Girl, and that was, I guess, the first like ruffling of where I was like looking at a what I thought was a nice sunset, and then all of a sudden I saw something weird where it looked like the ruffling of a scrim, and I realized that maybe I'm not staring at a sunscript. Maybe I'm staring at a map painting, and there's something behind this, And so then when you're like, there's 70 bajillion of these games, I was like, okay, so that makes Bomber Girl now makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, no, because when both of us sat down to this, we were chained up in the cave just looking at shadows. We had no idea that there was a whole universe of bomber men and bomber women and people who don't even identify as a bomber gender, like just out there living their bomber lives.
Well, and that's actually I'm going to take that and run with it for a second. So, we were doing all of that, and so we went out, we saw the real world, and I came back to Megan still staring at the cave wall because she came in to watch me play because she was like, oh, well, I played Bomberman. I'm interested to finally see like you playing a game I played. And she came in and she's like, not Bomberman.
So actually you left the cave you were chained up in and then went to her cave. She was like, these shadows are not my shadows.
Yes. Well, I mean, I went to her and said, like, there are Bombermen that you would not know or believe. And she's like, no, this is reality. And it was funny, though, because she said, no, this isn't the game I played. And I was like, well, that doesn't surprise me. I know that and I knew there had been multiple titles. I just didn't know there were that many. And so she pulled it up on her phone. She's like, this is what I played. And I was like, no, it was never going to be that because it was Bomberman 64.
Oh, I felt that coming.
Yeah.
I didn't want to presume.
No, it was never going to be that.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So, I mean, overall, though, especially I thought they did a good job leveraging. So, as far as visuals as the aesthetic goes, I thought they did a good job in the beginning leveraging the visuals in such a way that they built a world for you to project onto. So the visuals that you see at the beginning is like Bomberman, like falling down into a chasm and, like him with his Indiana Jones hat and being awesome. And like, it gives you these full pictures as it's telling you the story. So then when you see what I think you were very apt with your analogy, those tokens moving around, you project, this grander thing on top of it. And I thought
you know what they're representative of.
Right. And so I thought they did a good job in the beginning leveraging that, 15-second intro. And then as far as visuals for gameplay, I thought they were remarkably well, much better than I expected, to be sure.
Well, they never break their own rules. Everything that moves kills you, right? They never mix up things where like, oh, some of the rock tiles are rock tiles, but some of the rock tiles are actually monsters, right? They never pull any crap like that. Like it's pretty much, here is the game, play it, right? It's a puzzle game. It's Tetris. It's Dr. Mario. It's if the rules weren't consistent, it wouldn't be a puzzle game. It would be like Wacky Fun World, guess what's going to happen next? And that does not make for good puzzling. So when thinking about it, kind of like these are the little tokens, I was again, like I was kind of turned off at first that in between each area, they're like, here's this new mechanic we're introducing into this next area. And I was like, oh, that's kind of lazy. Like, why don't they just show me what that does in gameplay? And then the more I thought about it, I was like, oh, because they literally can't. Like, like I can't be thrown into a puzzle and not know what all the tokens on the board do. Like, if I'm going to solve a mystery, I need to know that a lead pipe and a gun and poison are all potential murder weapons. I can't think the lead pipe just fell off the bottom of the sink, right? So at first, like the first couple areas and the first couple times I played through, I was like almost a little annoyed. I was just like, especially because like you can't, like A button through those screens. You kind of have to watch them. And I was like, oh, because this is literally the video game equivalent of like, I come to your house to play the Bomberman tabletop game, and you take out the instructions, and you're like, this token does this token does that, this square means this. And it's like, yeah, of course you would have to do that, because otherwise, as soon as we started to play the game, I wouldn't know what the hell to do. So This was another place that I was really surprised that when they showed me, like, this enemy can move over here, and, this thing explodes when you put a bomb next to it, and it lights up the dark room. I was like, why don't they just show me that? Oh, right. So it was like, I was surprised how many places I kind of like flip-flopped on, like initially being like repulsed by a design choice and then being like, nah, this kind of makes sense.
Yeah. And I mean, again, it is the Game Boy. It was limited in what it could do. And this actually touches on, this isn't a visual thing, but it doesn't really fit in anywhere, but I want to talk about it, which is I was recently introduced to a new concept, which was the difference between puzzle games and problem solving games.
Okay.
And I thought it was an interesting distinction, and we loves us some semantics. But like an example would be Portal is a puzzle solving game because there's pretty much one way to solve those puzzles, know. This would be closer. I mean, it's like it's a spectrum, obviously, right? But like Minecraft, for example, would be a problem-solving game in that you have a problem and there's like 50 different ways to solve it. And I think this kind of falls closer on the spectrum towards a problem-solving game because there was a number of times where like I started a level and was like I just started working my way clockwise to clear everything out, and I died a few times. I was like, well, let me try just working counterclockwise. And there's no doubt in my mind that you could definitely clear it working from any direction, going in any which way you want. It's not like you have to clear this block and then you place a bomb here and here, and that is the way to do it. So I thought it was very interesting that, there were a bunch of different ways in which to solve these puzzles. So I think that in my mind, this actually falls closer in the spectrum to a problem-solving game, which is an incredibly useful skill.
Well, and it's not I would say a true puzzle, not that it's better, but to be a strict puzzle, it would have to have one solution.
Right.
Like
Exactly.
a literal puzzle where you have taken a picture and chopped it into pieces. Those pieces can only go back together exactly one correct way.
Mm-hmm.
You could solve the problem of seeing the picture by like mashing chunks together and leaving parts out and filling them in with your imagination, but the puzzle can only be solved one way. And this definitely has multiple solutions, but there are times when there's an obvious optimal solution, or there are game modes that enforce a single or closer to a single solution. Like We'll talk about later the game mode where you have to kill enemies in order. Mm-hmm. Like that would push it back toward being more single solution. And then there are other places where it's like, bomb to your bomb's delight, bomb it up, bomb guy. And it's just like bomb however you want to bomb. And there's infinite solutions, or, as many as there are, more than one.
Exactly. And so I think that, like I said, I just came across that comparison recently, and it's kind of reframed the way I look at some games, because like I said, like there are some where especially like old school adventure games and things like that, where like there is one solved problem. You use baby on ocean or something like that
on a lake.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
It's throw baby.
Yeah, I thought it was, but I didn't want to guess and be wrong. Like I thought
that's fair.
To err on this side of caution of babies going into lakes.
Yeah, I didn't write it. It's just I laugh at it.
But yeah, so I thought that was interesting. Also, I thought so I didn't get super far into this game because I really enjoyed playing through like the different game modes and stuff like that.
Oh, well, hang on. But before, because I can actually tie your crazy thing back to visuals for you.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah. So the one thing that I noticed the more I was playing is that I at first was playing very lazily, and I was like, oh, I'll just do whatever. I'll just blow this up. Oh, I could have put a bomb over there and I would have hit both these things at the same time instead of laying two bombs separately or whatever. And the reason I noticed I wasn't becoming hyper obsessed with like a more efficient solution is because ultimately I cleared every map. Like every map, I wasn't doing it on purpose or thoughtfully. I was just like, oh, there's a rock I didn't blow up, even though I'm on my way to the exit. And I would like go back over to that rock and almost like obsessively be like, oh, okay, it's destroyed now. Like I turned the light switch on and off 34 times. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to make fun of anybody, but like it was like that subconscious where I was just like, oh, I'm just doing this, and it's almost against my will. And the reason I can say that with a little bit of certainty is because later when I was trying to be more efficient and like explore the game mechanics a little more, I had to like tell myself not to do that. And it's because I really liked walking to the exit and seeing everything had been explored. And the easiest way to tell in Bomberman that you've been somewhere is that everything that could be blowed up, you did blow it up.
You done blew it up. Yep.
Yes, it's like there's a nice like visual cleanliness to it. And in some of the later areas, the more I was playing, like I didn't get that visual cleanliness because I was trying to be like more efficient and more strategic.
Right.
I think tactical is actually the correct word. But anyway.
Yeah. Strategy is
long term.
Yeah.
Strategy is long term. Tactics is present term.
Exactly. Anyways, but no, this is true. Yeah, I thought that as far as the visuals go, because this is normally where we talk about hitbox. So generally speaking, the hitboxes of like the creatures themselves, I thought were fine. And when they aired on the side of the player, which is, as we've discussed, the way to go.
Yep.
The bosses I thought were finicky.
So I agree with you that generally speaking, the monsters gave a little bit. You had a little bit of wiggle room in favor of the player, which is generally the right thing to do. Now, the bosses, the thing that was difficult about them is the bosses are huge. They're all like, I think 2 at least 2x2 squares, if not like 2x6 squares. Like they're huge, or 2x3. They're friggin' massive. So you end up with an object that takes up a disproportionate amount of the screen and is supposed to be floating vertically. So like if you were looking at it, it would have the appearance of like a tower that's moving, like a rook moving around a chessboard, and you are down on the ground. So all of the bosses have some amount of visual space that you can pass behind them without getting hurt. So they all have a hitbox that is smaller than their representation on screen because you can pass behind them under the right circumstances. And that is a really hard thing to convey on a Game Boy screen.
Yes. Yeah. And I did not catch any of that. And so basically, and the bosses, they're not super difficult. And also, and we can get into the cycle time mechanic, further reduce my frustration with this, because if it was like a typical game where you lose all 3 lives and now you got to start over at the beginning and just slog your way back up, I would have been furious. but
thank you, 4-digit passwords.
Yes, but like whenever I just, because even when you die and continue, it just restarts you at that stage a little depowered, so it's just like whenever I got my lunch at, because the hitbox was a little bit off, I was like whatever. And then the way I actually combated it was just laying more bombs, so just and so in a way it almost made it not I would have rather had a cleaner hitbox. But the nice thing was I was just kind of like, are you going to be finicky with the hitbox? Well, you know what my other 4 bombs have to say about that. They totally just went with the shotgun approach of, instead of just being like, okay, all right, I need to understand how I can pierce this thing's armor with my super set. No, nope. Just
that's how I fought every single boss. 4 bombs, all dropped, all in a line, so that if I misrepresented, or if I misaimed a little bit, it's like, well, close enough.
Although there's nothing, and Megan unfortunately saw my shame on this one a couple of times. There's nothing more shameful than when you're running and bombing and you accidentally like hit a little too soon and you put the bomb in front of you and there's a bomb right behind you and you just get to sit there for like a solid 1.5 seconds while you just wait for your end, just dejected. We go like, I screwed this up.
Well, and then when you get the whip, that changes that a little bit, but you still manage to pin yourself in a corner where there's nowhere to whip that bomb.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's just because, and we spoke already about the fact that Bomberman's sprite is very simplistic, but I could see disappointment in his eyes.
Yeah. Those 2 big sad eyes.
As he just like stared into this pulsating bomb, which is the size of him, that I assume he has like a bag of holding, that he's just pulling these out of. Is there canon for why Bomberman's able to haul around?
Is it not like a chicken and egg thing?
What?
Does he not lay bombs?
Well,
no, I'm definitely not saying that that's actually what's happening. Although that is absolutely what's happening. Yeah. No, I have no idea what his thing is. I, in true spirit to the show, did not look into it.
Yeah, no, so I don't know. You're like, is it like a chicken and egg thing? I'm like, the bombs are bigger than him. Like it just disappeared. No, it's
the bomb token is bigger than the Bomberman token.
Yes.
It's different.
And part of me would love it, but in my mind, like, because it is a very cartoony aesthetic, is that he's just got like it kind of like in Scott Pilgrim with what's the girlfriend's name?
The Knives or Ramona?
Ramona. Where Ramona like pulls out the huge sledgehammer like out of
from her tiny little purse.
Yeah, like that's what I'm picturing. Is he's got like this like little bag and he just like reaches in and pulls out this bomb that slowly becomes like as big as him, and he sets it down. And he just anyways, the reason why I say all that is that like he throws that down in front of him and he can't whip it anywhere and it's just pulsating and he can see in this shiny glass reflection his own face, and sadness wash over him as he knows he will never again gaze upon Bomber Girl. And
oh,
so you got anything else on visuals?
I don't have anything else at all.
want to be here anymore.
No, okay, so sound. This game has sounds in it, and okay, so these are literally the fewest notes I've ever taken for audio in a game. And and I don't know how to feel about it because I have nothing bad to say about it, but I have nothing good to say about it. Like, each area has its own music, which is nice.
Yep.
And then the bosses all have the same boss music, which gives you a certain amount of consistency. And then the last boss has special last boss music, which is nice. But I don't know. Maybe it's just because I didn't have the sound up super loud because I was usually playing at a time when my kids were asleep, or maybe it's because I don't have like any affinity for these tunes, but I was just like, yeah, I mean, there's music.
And I certainly understand the, you know, like you don't want to be blaring the TV loudly when your kids are asleep. But a part of me, just like, I don't know why I thought this, but it's like, just imagine you like putting your daughter down and then like the TV was like in her room. So you're like shh, go to sleep. And then like you just turn around and like pick up the controller. It's like, Daddy, what are you?
Shh, go to bed.
Go to bed.
I have to save this ring or save Bomber Girl or whip some rocks. I don't know. I'm not clear on what my objectives are right now.
I'm not really clear for what's at stake. All I know is that it's like the button where it's like if you press this button, someone will die. It's like bang. It's like no, you didn't hear the whole riddle. Oh, I'm sorry, but you'll also get $1 million. Like it's like I don't need the story. I don't need to know what I'm saving. I was in it for the bombs. You know?
Yeah. I'm just here for the bombs. It's but the reason I feel a little bad saying like I didn't take particular note of the music is because the Game Boy is every bit as handicapped auditorially as it is visually, and maybe even more so because not only did they have less digital information that they could store, but
deal with the crappy speaker,
the crappiest speaker. And I mean, again, I got to play Super Game Boy style, so I had like normal modern speakers, and I know that a lot of kids played with headphones in, but like, I don't know. I just wasn't like, and I think it's more insulting to be like, yeah, I nothing you. Like, it's
so would you say, as far as the sound went, you were close to being an Eskimo, or an Eskimo?
I was not into it.
You were super not into it. I actually had two notes on the audio. I mean, because there were two of them, two notes of note. You know, because like the music, like you said, is like, yeah, it's fun, it's peppy, it's cool, it's whatever. I thought that it was very important. There is a very distinct enemy mob dying noise. No, but this was super important because it's loud and it's clear, and that's important because a lot of the times, not a lot of times, but often enough, enemies can die off screen.
That is legit.
Yeah, and so it's like, because there were a couple times where I'd place a bomb and I'd walk away and listen to hear if I nailed it or if it like went around a corner when I couldn't see it, because especially when you get those bombs super powered up and they're almost as dangerous to you as they are.
Yeah, you sort of need to get out of dodge.
Like you put a bomb down, you're like crap, and it's like you're just like running away. But yeah, so it makes that very distinctive sound when they die, and I started to use that as a clutch for when they were off screen.
Well,
so I thought
did you make it to the area that has the teleporty things?
No, I did not.
Okay, so and I think this. So we'll talk about the modes, but one of the areas has like these teleporty things, which is how you get around that area. So you can't just walk a straight line. You have to use these little teleporty caves. And I didn't think about it as favorably as you did, but I probably should have, because I recognized that if you drop a bomb and go through a teleporty thing, that bomb still explodes and still kills things. And once I put that together and I was confident that was happening, because of the audio cue, then I started being like a frightening monster who would pop out of this teleporty thing where you have like 2 seconds of invincibility, throw bombs everywhere, and then disappear back into the teleporty thing. And it does like a little screen flash, and it makes a little noise when you go through the teleporty thing, and then just like boom, 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 boom.
Yeah, no, definitely during mechanics we can talk about like the bomb getting more bombs and getting them powered up, because there were some times where I was like, I saw a power up, I was like, I don't I don't want this. I was like, these bombs are as powerful as I feel I should have. It's like, do you want more powerful? No, I'm happy with my bomb's power. Are you sure? Because here's another. No, I'm good. Go home,
I'm pretty good.
The one other just note that I had was this game does have one of your favorite things in it, and so every time it was happening, I got super excited, which was that it makes a noise with every step that you take, and I know how much you love that.
So this was a fringe benefit of not being able to hear the music, was not being able to hear that either.
Yep, because it's like of that shoe scuffing like every time you're walking around. And it's funny because ever since we played Donkey Kong, like I've become hyper aware of that because I just realized that it's just so wildly unnecessary. Like, you know, when you're moving, you know, like that's something that you have direct control over. And it's just like, and yeah, there are some other things, like other times in games where like it makes a sound effect and you are the thing that is causing the sound effect. But walking is something you're doing all the time. And because it raises the background noise, basically, it makes you less likely to hear cues that you do need, you know? So yeah, now whenever I hear that, I was like, ooh, this is something Lions just loves.
Yeah, I totally dig it. And it's in defense of the tonal range that they chose in this game that it at least became white noise, whereas in Donkey Kong, every second was agony. Like, my brain never adjusted to that sound, whereas like there's lots of annoying repetitive noises in games where you just eventually are like, okay, this is just my life now, and you sort of forget about it, right? It's like someone who in like a tragic accident like loses a limb. Like, at first the phantom pain is like they can't stop thinking about it, but then eventually they're just like, yes, it's kind of in pain all the time. Like, that's what it's like to listen to Mario walk in Donkey Kong.
Yeah, it's like a bad smell, you know, where it's just eventually you just go nose deaf. You just can't smell it anymore.
Is that the clinical term?
I don't know actually whether or not they has any proper clinical things. If you want to know, you should hop on to the sister channel of Movie Medicine and check them out, because you know they have all kinds of good information and knowledge about that.
Yeah, but, that's moviemedicinepodcast.com. Anyway, you were saying.
No, where I actually know it from is, I think it's Ocean's 13.
Somebody goes nose deaf.
where they basically like horribly destroy that one hotel auditor, basically, and one of the things they do is they destroy his room and make it seem like he is unhygienic, and they knock on the door and they're like, "You've gone nose deaf," and that's where I know.
No, I mean it's descriptive. I definitely knew what you meant.
Well, and actually this deals with that in no way, but just something that a conversation I had recently that, well, it deals with that. It deals with video games in no way. The conversation I had with somebody recently where it's like, you know, dogs smell way better than we do. And the analogy is often like they smell like we see.
They can smell in colors we can't smell in.
Right. And so, and with a degree of fidelity that we can't smell in, you know? And so I said, like, yeah, like dogs smell like we see, you know? And somebody said, like, oh God, that'd be awful. I mean, like you know, I walk into a room and there's a bad smell and I can like barely deal with it. Could you imagine if it was like so much worse? I'm like, well, but remember, they smell like we see, because that would be like if you walked into the room and saw like something unbecoming going, like, oh my God, like every time you saw it. You know, it's not like you get used to it because you have this high visual stimulus all the time. You know?
Or if every time you woke up and opened your eyes, you were like, so many colors.
Oh my God, the colors, Duke. But
so the complete lack of a through line in this tangent, I think, speaks tremendously to how both of us feel about the audio in this game.
Yeah, it's like, look, we can sit here and we talk about the audio, or we could spend the time where we talk about audio talking about the way dogs smell.
Yep.
So, yes,
I will say that in the game's defense, just on the sound effects, much like the visuals being tokenized were very clear and consistent, the sound effects were very tokenized. Like, bomb always makes bomb noise, enemy dying always makes enemy dying noise, enemy that takes more than one hit always makes enemy taking a hit noise. Like, I had when you get a little power up, it makes power up noise. So like, I don't feel like there's anything to write home about, but I'm also not writing a letter home complaining, which
Right.
is in some ways, I think, a good thing. Like, people are a lot more, because we're such visual animals, even though our hearing is way more sensitive. People are very attuned culturally to being affronted by something that they don't like visually. Whereas when something is working auditorially, we almost expect not to notice it, especially like sounds and music in games and movies and television shows and stuff. Like, I don't really want to be thinking about like, wow, that was a really thoughtful bomb noise that I'm gonna have to hear 50 million times and appreciate every time. Like, no, I just kind of want it to just wash over me, and I don't really think about it or care. Like, this is not
like
the
donuts,
symphony.
Eh?
Yeah.
Have all of the donuts in the world. Yeah, it's like, oh,
Yeah.
you're not
so
Homer
it-
Simpson.
I almost feel like saying the sound was unremarkable is kind of a compliment, but we don't have to beat that horse.
Yeah. No, I'd say like on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being amazing, 1 being terrible. This one ranks in at like a 5.5, which is slightly, but like I think that this isn't, like you said, there's nothing good to write home about. There's nothing good to complain about. This is the sound where you buy a postcard that says like "Wish you were here" and send it home, so that way your parents know that you're not dead. You know, like
you know what it is? It's on the you ever do like an annual job review where it's like you have like a 1 to 5 rating, and most employees, and I've worked with these people, a lot of people do not understand that a 3 meets expectations is not a punishment. It means we asked you to do something and you did it. And that is how I feel about the sound in this game. Like, how was my sound this year? You met expectations.
yeah, you were performing at or near expectations.
Yeah, carry on. If you want a bigger raise, then come back next year, but you're not going to get fired.
Yes.
You didn't bomb your review.
Man,
terrible.
that was just a dynamite pun.
No one is left listening.
And unsubscribed. But anyway, so mechanics, gameplay, all that fun stuff.
Well, I do want to call out the controls specifically, because a lot of times, I'll admit, a lot of times we get sloppy and we just lump these things together because we're not being sloppy, we're being super thoughtful, never sloppy. But this time, I do want to make the point to specifically call out the controls, because when they first alerted me in the little between area screen that I was going to get the whip, I spent about 3 or 4 seconds as soon as the next area loaded pressing buttons, and none of them making a whip happen.
Yep.
And then the first time I actually deployed the whip by pressing my face against a bomb, I was like, oh, I would not have thought of that. And then once I got used to it, like, the mechanic played out fine, but they didn't have a ton of flexibility in which things they could assign to buttons. They didn't want to do complicated, like press both buttons at the same time, or up and A does this, but down and A does that. Like, they didn't go with any of that. They
make
took
it select.
Never forget.
Never forget.
They opted for a movement based mechanic, which, given the nature of this game, actually makes total sense. And the second I encountered it and saw like the bomb always goes until it meets an obstruction, I was like, okay, I totally get it. I totally get why they went with this control for this mechanic, but I did spend probably about 10 seconds pressing the 2 buttons on the controller and being like, why aren't bombs? Why aren't whips?
Yeah. Why bombs? Why only whips? Well, especially because, you're like, all right, I got the whip. I'm gonna whip stuff, and then you pull out a bomb and you place it right in front of you. You're like, oh crap! And then you gotta like run away. And you're like, all right. Well, that didn't work, but maybe this will. You pull another bomb. Oh crap! And then you gotta like run away. So
you look like a crazy person.
Yeah, I did the exact same thing, and honestly, I think that it actually speaks more poorly, because I think that you're right. The choice to have it movement based, I think, for the control schema was absolutely the way to go. Because if you're, the first time I deployed it was because I put a bomb and bombed myself in the corner and was like panic moving towards it. like no, I don't want. And then it just like pushed it whipped it across the level. I was like, oh, and I don't have to have, like, I have agency in this situation. Okay.
Yay.
So your instinct is correct. But I just kind of thought that, on the screen where they're like, you got the whip, you can now whip bombs. Isn't that super cool? It's like, well, not if I don't know how.
Yeah. Give me a little more information, please.
Yeah, because I mean, like literally, they could have just been like, move up against the bomb to do it, or just simply had like a little screen above it that just shows you walking up towards a bomb and like moving, like it, like pressing the directional arrow and like it doing the action, being like this, like that. So I think the problem was with the conveyance, not with the control layout itself.
When I think, if I remember, it shows him doing it, but because you're not pressing any buttons, it's not, and there's no arrow pointing or anything. It's not obvious that the bomb is pressed or the bomb is dropped and then an arrow button is pressed. You would think maybe because you can't put two bombs on the same spot. My thought was the first time it will do the bomb and the second time it will do the whip. And I don't know if that was like a foolish thing to assume, but that is where my mind went.
Which is legit in my opinion. Yeah, so I thought that was, I agree with you. It took me a minute to be like, and how do I whip it good? Because as I get tired of getting these bombs blowed up in my face, I do, okay, I want to talk about the bomb power-ups real fast because like never have situations gotten away from me faster than as I just, because, at first you get one bomb and it explodes in one in every direction. You're like, oh, all right, that's cool. It's a Bomberman game. Okay. And then all of a sudden you can get two bombs. And you're like, all right, cool. Two bombs that explode two in each direction. You're like, oh, yeah. No, now it's getting good. Now I can, like, corner people. And it blows up three in each direction. You're like, yes. Four was too much. Four was too much. It was just that little extra one where, like, now... It was okay. So with the 4, you can just barely get out of the bomb's radius before it explodes.
But then you get the dash.
It's true, and that's super helpful. But to me, like, it was just I at that point was when I had to switch from placing bombs and running away from them to placing bombs and like ducking behind a corner as it like exploded behind me.
Oh yeah, no. See, this I think is interesting that we went two different directions on this, because when I first started, I was like, okay, one bomb blows up, the little plus sign. Wait, like I can only have one down at a time? I don't remember Bomberman being like that. And then when I started to get the power-ups, I was like, oh, now I have 3 bombs, and I can do them up to 2 squares. Now I have 4 bombs, 4 squares. Like, I quickly went from being like, Bomberman's not that powerful, to being like, I am a demon from hell raining fire down. Like, and no matter how many times I brutally murdered myself doing that, it did not change my playstyle one iota. Once... And I think this is actually part of the reason that I was so obsessed with destroying every obstacle, because I wanted every single power-up as soon as I could get it, because there's more power-ups than you need to get to 4 bombs for spread. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I want that as early as the game will let me have it so that I can become like the Mad Bomber from Cowboy Bebop and just be exploding stuff left and right.
Well, which I guess is what you want, because I was trying to be like, very concise and thoughtful. And because that was things when you said you cleared everything out, I did the opposite. I left as many obstructions as possible because that made it easier to corner baddies. So I was just kind of like, I came at it from the thing of like, I am a Bomberman, but that is not what defines me. I will use my bombs to surgically destroy the evil in this world and leave it as intact as possible. And you were like, blow it all up.
Yeah, no, I went full Rorschach and like... Because those monsters were like, oh, to get to me, you're going to have to blow up that obstacle, but then I'll be able to run free. And I was standing with my arms spread with smoking craters behind me, screaming, I'm not stuck in here with you. You're stuck in here with me. Like, just total psychopath.
You were just like, like, soon all you'll be feeling is oblivion. Final flash.
Well, this is strong evidence of this being more of a problem-solving game because we came up with very different solutions.
Yes, yes. No, I will leave this world as intact as I can when I find it. You're like blowing up cars.
Yeah. No, I was given a clear directive by my god, which I assume is the King Bomb from Super Mario 64. And
I'm 100% on board with this. Yes.
right, headcanon accepted. And King Bomb told me there are monsters and you need to blow them all up. And unfortunately, I had one of those like itches right behind my ear, and when like you scratch that part of your head, like it makes you can't hear anything. It's just all white noise. And I stopped scratching right when he said, "Blow them all up." Just like, yes, sir.
Well, like he said, you know, like you shall be my living avatar upon the earth, and then it's like, and you will destroy the monsters, and then it cuts to black, and it just like shows like you sitting upon like panning up, like you sitting upon this throne of bombs, like blacklit with like, you know, that blood all over it, and you just hear, you know, the narrator come on as James Earl Jones says, "He who hunts monsters must be careful that he himself does not become a monster." And he just like pans up and like you're holding a bomb, like staring into the fuse. It's like, for when you stare into the abyss too long, the abyss stares back into you.
So I will say, as a side note, one of the 47,000 Bomberman games, they did actually try and do like a gritty reboot at one point.
Fantastic.
I never played it, but I remember the box art as just being like so not Bomberman. And it's like, so this is a good use case if you ever think, oh man, a gritty reboot might be cool. Sometimes it is, and then sometimes they try and do a gritty reboot of Bomberman, and it's not cool.
No, oh god, no, I looked it up. It's not okay. Yeah, no, it's not Bomberman. It's I mean, it's just kind of like, you know, it'd be like if you took another like over the top cartoony thing and decided to make a gritty movie where, you know, like it takes place like, let's just say a plumber, right? Like it takes place in like this Tendenzian kind of thing, and it's all dark and gritty. It just it doesn't work.
Would not make sense, especially if like there were little turtle monsters and now they're like giant, tiny headed. Super Mario Brothers the movie was terrible. Anyway.
But one of the things I thought that was another mechanical choice that they made that I thought helped balance the game a little bit, which is that if you are going true Mad Bomberman and it's getting out of hand, the power-ups are destroyed by your bombs, though.
Yes.
So,
very interesting choice.
Yeah. So I kind of like that because it's just kind of like, okay, well, because that's the thing is that you went completely insane, but you had it under control. Like, you know, like you the bombs didn't own you. You owned the bombs, right?
I prefer to think of myself as like a sharpshooter. Like to an onlooker, I'm just swinging my 6-gun around and things are getting shot, but I'm actually making precision shots. Like I'm in control, but to an onlooker, I look insane.
Exactly. But I mean, I thought that because that's the thing is that you can't just say, throw down all of the bombs, blow everything up. Like you do have to be careful with the way you go about it, because if you do that, you will destroy your power-ups.
Yes.
You know, which is a good negative feedback loop, because then you don't get the power-ups, which means that, you know, you don't suddenly get to put down 4 bombs, because clearly putting down 3 bombs is getting a little out of hand for you because you're destroying your power-ups, you know?
Well, and one of the ways that I had this come back and bite me that I thought was actually pretty legit that the game thought to do this is one of the things that bombs can blow up is bombs. So if you...
Oh, yes, they cascade, yeah.
Yeah, they do. So if you are on, and there aren't a ton of these, but if you're on like a sort of long straightaway and you drop a bomb and whip it, and then you drop another bomb and whip it, now you need to be up to 8 squares away because you've created this unbelievably huge blast radius.
Yes.
And there were a couple times where my death came from off screen and I was like, wait, what the hell just happened? Oh, yeah, I deserve that.
Yeah. And that is something also worth touching on, is that because the mechanics are so like fair and they're telegraphed pretty well, that every time I died, I was like, yeah, I deserve that. Even when I remember, I think it's for whatever reason, stage 2, 3, I just got stuck on for whatever reason. But every time I died, even though I played that stage like 8 or 9 times, every time I died, I was like, no, that was my fault. I got careless. You know, there was never any point where I was like, no, the game cheated me, because I was playing on the mode where the hideouts are hidden, you know? And
yes,
so
I also hated that one.
So what?
I also hated that.
Yes. But I knew that the hideouts were hidden. So I knew, like, I was like, if I'm going down a new area, I either need to A, carpet bomb it, or B, move slowly, you know? And so every time when I got by the invisible hideout, I knew it was my fault, because I was like, no, I just wasn't paying attention, and I just started running down this unmarked hallway, and that's on me, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, the bombs always explode after the same amount of time in the same way. The enemies have pretty consistent hitboxes. There's, I think, literally one enemy in the entire game, at least I should say in the modes I played, because we got to talk about the modes, but there's only one enemy I remember encountering that after you hit it the first time, it then moves faster. So It's not like an enemy ever jumps out at you from around a corner. Like, if you see them coming, you know exactly what their movement speed is. They never go slower or faster. It's always that pace. And that kind of consistency leads to exactly the feeling you're describing. I died because I made a mistake, or because I wasn't paying attention, or because something, but not because the game sucks, the game's cheating, the rules were inconsistent, that didn't make sense, that's not how it went last time. Like, you never feel that way. And that's, I think that's important in general.
Yeah, no.
Like, that's good design, but I think it's paramount in a puzzle game, because if there are things happening that are beyond your knowledge and control, then it's not a puzzle. You don't have all the pieces.
Right. Well, it pushes you further into improvised gameplay, where all of a sudden you now need to improvise because you're given new information, because the game is changing the way that it's played. And this is all planning gameplay. Like, you're supposed to be able to plan the mechanisms of this puzzle. This is a minor note that I don't know why. I wrote this note down, and just because when it happened, I had such joy, and I don't know why, but is when you can trap a mob with your bomb to where they can't move anywhere.
Yes.
It is super satisfying.
Especially when you do it from a distance with the whip and you time it like just right. And you're like,
yeah. And like, you just see like the ghost, like, look at the bomb, and they'll just sit there and stare at the bomb and be like, yes. It's like, boom, dead. And you're like, haha, I ended your life again. You're a ghost. I don't know. Is it like Dragon Ball Z world rules, where like if they die twice, then they die forever?
It's like Coco. No,
Coco?
Disney movie.
Yeah.
Coco. Oh, it's really good.
No, I will add it to the list. But yeah, no, that was super satisfying. So do you want to talk about the modes next, or the continue cycle time next?
I think we should probably talk about the modes next, because I didn't introduce nearly as much variance into the modes as I should have when I was playing, and I mean, I was never going to explore every single combination, because nope. But I found a couple things interesting. One, the fact that this is even a thing. Like, each area you have to decide, do you want this quirk or this quirk? And it's not the same quirk every time. They always call it mode A and mode B, but mode A and mode B are different in every area. And I thought that was really interesting. But the descriptions I wasn't in love with. I didn't always feel like they clearly communicated the choice I was making. And then when they show you on the little cut scene before you start the area, it's like, well, but my choice is already made now. Like, I had 2 white cans, one that had a word I didn't know and one that had a word I thought I knew. And so I picked the one that I thought I knew, but now that I open the can, the store won't take it back. So it's like, there was a lot of, I don't want to say buyer's remorse, but it was like, what do you call it? Like what ifism, where I was just kind of like, what if I had chosen mode B? And it's like, I go find my old high school yearbook and I like slowly put my hand over mode B's picture, and I'm like, what might have been?
Yes. Oh, mode B. I remember looking back on that and just thinking, if I had chosen mode B, then I wouldn't have blown myself up 17 times with bombs. As I look at my high school year,
but like looking at the book, just camera pans out, just surrounded by bombs,
and you're like, oh, this wouldn't have happened with mode B, and then just. But yeah, no, I agree with all that. First of all, so on the complimentary note, it is a amazing way to generate replay value, and difference in kind, difference in like to make your game larger with doing stuff like this. I never even really thought about it. It's just like, because literally I played through stage 1, and then I reset it and went back to play stage 1 again on the other mode, you know? And just because again, it was research for a podcast, but I imagine like you go through, you select mode A all the way through, and then you like select mode B all the way through, and then you, all right, well, I want to do mode A for this one, mode B for this one. More in this kind of a mood, but just to give you the choice of being able to add that little bit of extra flavor. I think, I mean, basically effectively doubles the entertainment time of the game. And all you have to do is just say like, well, everything is the same except that we're going to make this token hidden, or you have to destroy this token before you destroy the bad guy associated with it, one or the other, you know?
Yeah. Or you have to kill all the monsters in order or whatever. Like because the modes were fairly varied.
Yeah,
Again, I don't know what all of them did because the descriptions, but like there was 2 new modes in each area.
Right. 2 new modes in each area. They were all varied, and yeah, it all added a unique kind of feel, and most importantly, changed the way you had to view the puzzle. You know, because, for example, when, you know, you're walking around and in the swamp area, you know, when it's hidden, you move a little bit slower and you preemptively bomb areas because you don't know where the hideouts are going to be, you know. But then when they're spawn points for enemies instead, you play it a lot faster and looser because you need to get on top of that spawn point really fast. So it completely changes your play style. All of that being said, I do absolutely agree where it's like, do you want to play hide and seek mode or do you want to play regeneration mode? I'm like, I don't know. What did they both do? No.
Nope.
Now. And I mean, you can definitely make the argument that, you know, there's a place in game time, a place in time for choice in games, and a place in time for consequences in games. This would be an example of consequence. And I don't think that they are leveraging it in the way that you would expect consequence to be leveraged in games.
Agreed. So I just need to do this as an aside. I'm usually pretty happy with my notes. Like I think I take pretty good notes. I have my computer next to me. I can type pretty fast, you know, so I'm like typing out my notes. I have a note in here that is interesting, and I cannot for the life of me remember what exactly it was referring to. But here's the whole thing. Bullet point. Not sure if the whip is dumb or I'm just not great at using it, but, and then indented second line, never mind, it's awesome. Area 4 taught me why it's awesome. I don't know what that means. I don't know why. I think Area 4 is where the hidden like nests are.
I know that for sure that's in Area 2.
Cool. Then no idea.
Then no.
I apparently there was something there that I was sending bombs off to do my dirty work while I hung out at a distance.
Was Area 4 the one with the teleporters?
No, that's way later. It's like 6 or 7.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, good to see sustained learning, you know?
Good notes. I do want to specifically point out that in Area 6 is when you get the motorcycle. And I thought the motor, did you get this far?
I think I touched on it like once, but then I vaguely remember being like, yeah, motorcycle, and then that was a while back when I started my playtime.
So the motorcycle lets you jump over a non-explodable obstacle if it's clear on the other side. So you can vault one obstacle. So like one tree, one rock. And it's interesting because it makes it a little bit harder to like pin yourself into a corner with bombs. That's not really what makes it special. When you have the motorcycle and you get hit, you don't die, you lose the motorcycle. So it is the only thing that I'm aware of in the game that gives you a single hit point, because otherwise it is always one hit dead.
Right. Which I do enjoy the... Okay, so to speak on the one hit dead, and this tangentially goes to another note, which is, it's, again, from a game developer standpoint, it's really easy, you know, you either have the motorcycle or you don't. You at the most have 2 hit points, right? As opposed to with some other games where you could have actually a great quote that I heard at one point was a DM was talking to his group, and the player turned to the other player and was like, hey, how many hit points do you have left? And the DM said, like, hey, no, you can't exchange that information. You can get a feel for how many hit points they have left, like a feel for how hurt they are, but you can't actually get the number. It's like, okay, on a scale of 1 to 89, I'm at about a 47. And
I appreciate that kind of introspection.
But anyways, so I mean, there's not a whole spectrum of hit points. It's like it's always one hit dead, which is something that's very easy to design around. And they also did a similar design note where they reset your spectacle creep at each stage.
Each area you have to collect power-ups again.
Correct, which is good because that way, they know beginning on area 2, you're always rebase powered, and it makes collecting power-ups always meaningful, even for a skilled player. It's something that it's a game mechanic you cannot eschew by virtue of just being awesome at the game. Because by the time I was at stage 5, I was not worried at all about the power-ups because I had been completely powered up for some time. And then when I got to area stage 2-1, I was like, oh, I've got to start being a little bit more careful again because I need these power-ups again, which I thought was a good design decision.
Yeah, it also forces you to kind of engage with what's new about the new area, as opposed to being like, well, I was really enjoying my, whipping 4x4 bombs around. And it's like, no. If you want to do that again, like you have to build back up to it, which is, it makes you have to take stock of the world because the power-ups are in the world.
Right. No, that's actually a really good point because, as opposed to just being like, I'm walking in and being like, I am a golden god, I shall remake this world in my image. It's like, no, take the world in.
Perfect and round and shiny.
The one final note that I have is on the continues and the cycle time. And the password system. So first of all, the password system I liked because it was easy, like it's just four numbers. So it's just really easy to just write that down as opposed to some games where it's just like this 17 character code, numbers, symbols, uppercase, lowercase,
One of the Mega Man games did a coordinate grid.
Well, and so for the Mega Man games in particular, or at least Mega Man X, right? I could see that because I think they actually kind of needed that much information in order to generate the actual game you were playing because each power-up made it a little bit different.
I'm talking like way back, like Mega Man 3 or something.
Yeah.
Use like a red dot coordinate grid. It was like, you have to play this game of Battleship to load your save.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Sorry, that all just came screaming back to me. So I thought the password system was reasonable. It was just kind of like, look, here's your password, easy peasy. But I never really even used them that much just because, the continue system is so easy to use, so basically like you go through, you got 3 lives. And if you got to continue, you start over at the same stage, just slightly depowered, and so all of that, at no point did I feel like I was slogging back through stuff that I had already mastered in order to get a crack at the thing that killed me.
Yeah, it's Castlevania style.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise it would be heartbreaking. And this was not that. There were some times where I would get like 3/4 of the way through the stage and then accidentally blow myself up. And I was like, gotta go back through and do all. But I mean, again, at most the cycle time is like a minute or 2, which for games of this era is very understandable.
Well, and it's if you keep blowing yourself up, to start over from the beginning of that stage with your power-ups gone, it's kind of the game's way of saying like, honey, calm down, take a deep breath. We're gonna sing the Daniel Tiger calm down song, and then I will give you your bombs back. Yeah. But it's like, because if they just, because it's a a puzzle game where you're being timed and you have a tool that also murders you, I think if you continually kept your power-ups and you just got to keep starting over from right where you were at increasing frustration, you probably actually end up rage quitting more because you would keep blowing yourself up and just being like, god damn it, and you know that would just be it. Whereas like being like, okay honey, calm down, just catch your breath here. I'm gonna take away the 4x4 bombs. Here's the 1x1 bomb again. When you've calmed down, then you can have the 4x4 bombs back.
Yeah, no, and actually that's a very, very good point I didn't really think about, which is, it's that a lot of the times chances are the thing that killed you. It's like wielding a lightsaber. You're as likely to hurt yourself as you are to hurt somebody else. I would say that approximately half, if not more, of my deaths were entirely self-inflicted.
Yeah, no, I could agree with that.
So, which I didn't really think about until you said, I was like, yeah, I was my own worst enemy on that one. But then that's the thing, is because it feels like a mild punishment, so it does feel like self-murder has repercussions, which is good. Because if it was nothing, you'd be like, oh, well, okay, I'll just, like you say, keep throwing Bomberman against the wall until I see what sticks, which would make it cease to be a puzzle game or a problem-solving game. It would be a choke the rivers with our dead game. And that's not the game. I
can't jump over this pit, so I'm going to fill it with Mario corpses until I can walk across it.
But so what they then did was they basically said, like, okay, well, your punishment is we're going to depower you a little bit, which is actually probably the thing that killed you in the first place. So it's actually like a good feedback loop, which I think is really kind of clever. Good for them.
So this is an excellent segue into my feelings on how this held up. But I don't want to talk over you if you had anything else. Are you ready to go into that good night?
I am. Do it.
Okay. So I think this game was exceptionally thoughtfully designed, and this mechanic we're talking about where it's kind of like, hey, you've kind of been killing yourself a lot, maybe like slow down. The problem that I had, and I don't know if I've actually felt this way about any game we've played so far on Nostalgia Goggles, is I have a tremendous amount of respect for this game, and I found it almost soul-crushingly boring. Like once I knew what needed to be done, I felt like I could not do it fast enough. And that was weirdly, like, even if there was just a way, like, oh, if you triple tap the A button, you can make the bomb explode instantly instead of after a second and a half or something, which I'm fairly confident you can't do, but I'm going to feel like an idiot if you could. It's probably A and select, but yeah. There's like, because I would see like, okay, there's one enemy left and I have to blow up 6 rocks to get to him. And then the exit's over there and I have to blow up 4 rocks to get to the exit. And I was like, and that's what I'm going to do now is like, right. I'm not going to screw this up. It's really obvious what needs to be done. And it is literally just waiting for my bombs to explode so I can walk to the exit. And I had that feeling come over me almost an alarming amount. Like there were times when I was really, really enjoying myself and I was like whipping bombs and motorcycling over rocks. And it was like, it felt cool, but I realized that the more engaged I was, the more like reckless action game I was playing. And the more I treated it like a methodical puzzle, the more I was just like, okay, I see a solution. It may not be the optimal solution, but I see a solution. And now it is just a matter of walking through it. And that was a weird feeling to be like, I have tremendous respect for this work of art that I don't like.
Well, and I think that I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the fact that it was missing the mechanic of being able to voluntarily detonate your bomb, That being said, like, I don't think they could have added that in because that would have made killing enemies too easy, because timing out when they cross with like your bomb exploding is part of the challenge. So
yeah, no, they could not have a detonate on command mechanic. It would change everything.
Right. So yeah, it's the only other thing I could think of is, the only other way I could think to combat that would be to create destructible surfaces that could be and destructible surfaces that cannot be destroyed in tandem, because every time you put a bomb down, it destroys one layer, right? So if you got like 3 layers, you got to put a bomb down and wait, put a bomb down, wait. But if they had it where it's like, no, you can just destroy all 3 of these, but there are some of them where you have to do it that way, then they could modulate how fast the player is getting through it a little bit better.
And I mean, that would add a complication of like, then it would be tempting if you could blow up to 3 rocks at once, then they would just put 6. And now you have to still do 2 bombs to get through instead of just putting 2 rocks instead of 6 rocks, right? Because
right.
it's how many bombs does it take to get to the center of a level? Like 1 or 2, right? Like this is essentially the level design is like, there's an optimum number of bombs between you and the exit, and then there's some presumably maximum number of bombs because it's a timed level, right? So there's an optimum minimal number and a maximum number of bombs, and I fell certainly somewhere in the middle, probably even toward the maximum end since I was being a reckless psychopath. But once I was aware of the remaining solution, my interest just totally tanked, which was legitimately shocking to me because I was like, oh, there's 1 enemy left, the exit's over there, and I suddenly don't care at all. Like I'm completely disengaged, which is a weird feeling.
Yeah, no, that is definitely odd. Yeah, I mean, for me overall, like, did it hold up? Yes. I think that the game is absolutely worth playing. I think it's a good problem-solving game. I think you're right in the sense that it is a little like this. The pace is just, a half step too slow in some places, because I definitely did get that same thing where I'd be like, okay, put a bomb down, go wait. Normally, way I would pass the time is just go blow up other stuff, for just sheer boredom, but I don't think at any point I was just kind of like, no, I don't. It never got to the point where I was like, I don't want to play this game, but it did. Sometimes I would be like, I get it. Yeah, I get it.
Right. Yeah. This level is dead to me. Like,
right.
I don't want to turn the game off, but I really am done with this because, like, I get it. I see the picture. The puzzle part is solved.
Right. Exactly. So, but I definitely, absolutely think, especially all things considered, with the level of technology. If somebody said to me, "Hey, I want to play a Bomberman game," I would probably say, no, play Bomberman 64, play a later title that, made it, like, honed it a little bit more, But if somebody asked me, hey, I want to play a Game Boy puzzle game, right? I would say, play Tetris. And then if they said, okay, but no, I want to play a different Game Boy puzzle game, I'd say, absolutely, play Dr. Mario. And then if they said, but no, I don't really want to play that either, I would say, okay, well, maybe you should check out Bomberman. Bomberman's pretty good.
The curtain falls. The music plays, the credits roll, then it all fades to black, and you're left by yourself. The fanfare is gone, there's no player 2 there by your side to share victories won. But as you slowly progress down the hall to your bed, a few great events leak back into your head from the time that you spent traversing the land, battling evil, fighting the darkness, just sword in hand. Your memories creep in with the edge of a smile. You realize again what you lost for a while.